Hello everyone. After in-depth panel discussions on iron ore and steel yesterday, I welcome you all to yet another insightful day of Steelman's Engage 5.0, the Virtual Connect webinar series. Our topic for the discussion in this session is navigating the India's ferromolybdenum landscape, market trends, trade dynamics, and future prospects. I am Nishtha Mukherjee, General Manager Steel Mint, and I have with me Ms. Anvita Pandey, Senior Analyst at Steel Mint, who will be co-hosting this webinar with me. Welcome, Anvita.
Hi, ma'am.
We also have with us two industry experts who will be sharing their views on the topic today. Our first panelist is Mr. Udayan Gudgutia, Executive Director, Team Ferroalloys, which is India's largest ferromoly producer with 300 ton per month volume. Welcome, sir. Our second panelist is Mr. Parvesh Garg, Senior Vice President, Noble Ferroalloys Unit at SL Mining Industries. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
The year 2023 has been very eventful for the alloy and oxide markets. Ferromolybdenum prices surged to record highs in February 2023 due to supply constraints from leading molybdenum producers, Chile and Peru. On the India front, in order to safeguard the interests of the domestic players, Indian government had introduced an import duty on ferromoly imports from South Korea, which was earlier duty-free. I now invite Anvita to give a brief overview of the ferromolybdenum market. Over to you, Anvita.
Okay. Ma'am, could you please run the presentation?
Sure. I hope it is visible now.
Yeah. So today I'm going to brief you a market overview of ferromoly, an alloy that might not be a household name, but its impact is felt across various industries. Next slide. So before moving ahead with the presentation, let me give you a brief overview of Steel Mint. With over 600 price assessments and 500 data sets, Steel Mint has emerged as a leading market intelligence firm over the last decade. So this special alloy made from roasted molybdenum ore and concentrate is a big deal in military gear. Indian defense loves it for being heat resistant and super useful in making stuff like aircraft engines, rockets, and anti-tank systems. It's like the secret ingredient for giving military hardware a boost in performance. Speaking about market dynamics, the demand is primarily driven by stainless steel and alloy steel production, with tube and pipe manufacturing being a significant influence. With global CAGR growth of 3.5% in between 2018 to 2023, the industrial activities and infrastructural expansion in countries like China, India, and Indonesia played a major role. Major producing countries of ferromoly are China, USA, Russia, and Chile. The production process starts from mining molybdenum, then transforming it into molybdenum oxide, mixing it with iron oxide and aluminium, and reducing it in an aluminothermy reaction. And it is generally supplied as small briquettes or fine powder with packaging done in bags or steel drums. Talking about the molybdenum oxide reserves, there's total of around 18 million ton reserves currently. China holds the first spot with around 8.3 million ton reserves, followed by US with 2.7 million ton and Peru at 2.3 million ton. Chile has a reserve of around 1.4 million ton. Now speaking about India's production trend, it has been falling as we can see in graph. There was a significant drop in 2019 to 20 as it fell from 1003 ton to 527 ton. This drop had a substantial impact in India's manufacturing landscape. Also, we can observe that The consistent increase in imports every year may have contributed to a reduction in production. Meanwhile, according to industry sources, there are around 20 units manufacturing ferromolybdenum in India. Next slide, please. Here you can see the prices of Indian ferromolybdenum as assessed by Steelman from January 2023. Prices were at peak in the month of February 23 as there was a strong demand in Chinese market post Lunar New Year holidays. Market expected China's demand to increase, but it went way beyond expectations. Meanwhile, global supply was also limited that time, which helped to boost the prices. In this slide, you all can see the pricing trends in London Metal Exchange platform. This remains a major factor which drives ferromoly prices globally and is the Indian market. So that is all I had to present. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Anvita, for that pertinent presentation, giving deep insights into the ferromolybdenum market. Well, now it's time to hear the views from our esteemed panelists. A note for the audience that anyone who wishes to ask a question may please share them in the chat box. We now begin with the panel discussion. We'll be dividing this panel discussion into 4 segments, which will be focusing on the ferromolybdenum production, demand, imports, and prices. So beginning with the first segment, my first question is to Mr. Garg. So what are the current trends that you are seeing in the ferromoly production in India? And could you please provide some inputs on the factors that are influencing these production volumes of ferromoly in India?
So, yeah, thank you. So as Anvita said that recently India has imposed a safeguard duty on ferromoly imports from Korea, which was one of the major import sourcing destination in India because of the FTA free trade agreements, wherein the FIMO imports were happening at zero duty. So now this under this safeguard duty, the 5% custom duty, which is applicable to all the countries, has also been levied on the South Korea. So making it a level playing field for Korea to all the other countries. So this has also given us a positive signal to the domestic ferromolybdenum production that now the production which was the ferromolybdenum imports which were happening. So now by and large the production is happening in India, and this is a positive sign for Indian producers also. And this will provide them a relief, the pain they were going through for last so many years. So this has provided them some relief. Of course, it is recently imposed from October. So the impact is yet to be seen fully. However, we do see that the production is going to increase for ferromoly producers in coming days and coming months and years. Secondly, one positive development is also that Indian government is also going to unveil the stainless steel policy in early 2024, which will also be, we believe that it will also help the domestic producers to increase its production capacity and increase its production and support the domestic stainless steel industry vis-a-vis the imports of ferromolybdenum. So these two factors, I believe, are positive sign for ferromolybdenum producers in India and other. We are looking at a better future in coming days. Yeah.
So before I think Anvita asked the other question, I'll ask Udayan sir that what is your production guidance for this year, and how are you seeing the production numbers in the next year? Sir, you are on mute. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I hope me and Mr. Parvesh Garg will give you the best possible insights on this particular webinar to the best of the guidance and benefit to everyone. As Mr. Parvesh ji said, he's correctly said that because of the duty implementation, the scope and the positive outlook on increasing the production by the domestic manufacturers is going to definitely increase. To answer your question, Anvita, uh, the driving factors is basically, if you see in current situation, this demand of high quality steel in India is increasing. Now, by saying that, definitely the consumption of molybdenum into high quality steel will increase. And with this duty implementation, you can see almost around 30 to 40% of monthly consumption of Indians was imported from mainly largely Korea, which now gives the benefit and the advantage to the Indian producers to produce it domestically, as in called Make in India concept, and which will definitely also invite couple of more players into the market, and it will boost everybody's capacity utilization, which was actually not even 60-70% utilized. So that would also enhance the production capital utilization, as well as this would help in reduce the cost of all the manufacturers, because it's a direct relation. If your capacity is utilized, your costs reduce, and that will any which way is going to directly benefit the Indian consumers of molybdenum. Rest, Barveji was self-explanatory on how the current trends and how the insights of factors will be influencing the production of ferromoly.
Okay. So my next question is to Udayan sir. Currently, ferromoly is being produced by alumina thermit process. So, can any technological advancement or innovation come in India for producing ferromoly, which could be more cost effective?
Uh, s- so far, my knowledge is concerned, I would take a help of Parveshji also in this. To my knowledge, there has been never any other form of production process in ferromolybdenum. Why aluminum thermit process and why not the bulk way of furnace route or direct other processes? See, understand, molybdenum is a very critical item. It's based on its moly content. The pricing is based on its content. Whenever you go for bulk production, there are chances of huge deviations or variations in the content of molybdenum from production to production. Wherein this item is such, the more it is produced in a concentrated form and in a smaller quantity, the better results are obtained. So far, I don't think so in the world also there is any other better or the best process in terms of productivity and quality other than aluminothermite process. Of course, we are into the new era wherein technology advancements are continuously taking place in every segment. Who would knew that silicomanganese can be produced through a furnace route wherein it started from a thermit process only? Like many of them still don't know that the base was thermit process. Just like that, but nothing near to next 5 years or 10 years, I can see any major technological development coming in place which would replace or substitute the aluminothermite process. Talking about what would be more cost effective, see, understand, in molybdenum, the major cost is its raw material. The cost which is being added over and above the raw material, that is called, we call it as value addition, that is not even 8 to 10% currently. So there's no much scope that even if now if there is another process coming in, the fuel cost would increase, the electricity cost would increase. So that's a substitute, but so far I don't think so that would be more cost effective, because then we also have to look on the sides of quality production, more and more accuracy in the moly content, which is the main driving factor for its pricing and quality oriented. So next 10 years, I don't think so there would be any other technological development or advancement or innovation apart from the aluminothermite process. Yeah, of course, slight changes in the current process of aluminite thermite may happen. That is on one's own wisdom, how he wants to more minimize the loopholes and the gaps and improvise it on its own productivity.
Yeah,
So,
to me,
Anvita,
sorry.
yeah. Mr. Garg, please go ahead.
Yeah, to me also, I would second the thought of Udayan that that aluminum thermy remains a mother manufacturing process. I would say that And just take a parallel from aluminium, wherein the aluminium reduction process is a Hall-Herold process, which has been running for no for a century, you can say. There has been attempts to replace that process, but not to that extent successfully on a commercial scale. There may be some pilot scale processes, lab scale trials, etc., etc. But doing it on a commercial scale, day in, day out, every day. So across the industry, that has not happened. So molybdenum also, see molybdenum. What are you doing in molybdenum? You are taking an oxide and then you are converting it to metal. So essentially, you are taking oxygen away from it. So you need a reducent. So you need an element which will take away the oxygen from molybdenum oxide to convert it into moly. So, like for example, in vanadium, we have majority as aluminium. In moly, we have majority of such reducent is silicon. Uh, so, uh, so I think one reducent is required. So, second part in this thermic process is your heat balance. So, for heat balance, you need a reducent which will provide sufficient heat so that there is a sufficient slag and metal separation. Again, taking a parallel from vanadium, which is another novel ferroalloy, wherein there has been attempts to reduce the aluminum consumption by converting it from V2O3 using the furnace. So, whatever the heat balance is not provided, heat is not provided by aluminum with lesser oxygen, that is supplemented through furnace. In case of moly, it's not there. So, in coming days also, we don't see that possibility because of the price, etc., of silicon furnace, etc. So essentially, this is going to be the mother operation, mother production process that we see for foreseeable future. That's
So, sir, any challenges you do face in terms of increasing or optimizing ferromoly production?
challenges. See, the ferromolybdenum industry is essentially, as we are saying that we are 20 ferromolybdenum producers in India, and everybody has huge capacity. Adding capacity is not a challenge. Everybody has a capacity. The challenge is the demand. So the demand pulls the production. Um, so um, so the challenge is to create demand, to have demand, and as we discussed earlier, that part of this demand earlier was being fulfilled by the direct imports of ferromoly from Korea. So now, with this safeguard duty having been imposed, so now that capacity utilization will be better off in India. And once the production level rises to meet the cater to the demand of Indian stainless steel industry or the other segment of industry, which is consuming industry, so the production level are expected to rise, and I think Indian ferromoly producers are attuned to that. They are aligned to that. That they will have to work towards meeting the requirement of its customers in India. Those who were importing it earlier through direct method. So now we'll have to produce and supplement our capacities and be more aligned to their requirement and fulfill that. So the only challenge is the demand. Otherwise, I don't see any challenge in increasing the ferromoly productions per se. Production is an easier part of it.
All right, sir. With this, we move on to the next segment of our panel discussion, which is on ferromoly demand and consumption on India perspective. So in this segment, my first question is to Udayan sir. Sir, what is tentatively the current annual consumption of ferromoly and moly oxide, and how do you see things changing in 2024? Just a ballpark number.
I'll explain it into two parts. Indian moly consumption is roughly 1200 to 1300 metric tons a month, which includes the imports of ferromoly as well as the oxides imported and then produced into ferromoly. Now, to give you the current figures of the last 4-5 months, moly oxides have been imported roughly around 600 to 700 metric tons every month. Earlier, this was less because over the period, the consumption of molybdenum into steel, or as I mentioned initially, consumption of moly into high quality steel, that awareness is increasing. And that is why the demand for molybdenum into steel will continuously be increasing over the period. It is not going to reduce. This is one of the critical items. Likewise, uh, since last 6 months, the consumptions or the imports of moly oxide was around 600 to 700 tons, vis-a-vis ferromoly was roughly 300, 350 tons a month, which is since October reducing due to implementation of duty. Uh, Coming to the question again, compared to the previous year, of course, we see an increase of around 7 to 8% of moly oxide imports. Other countries which are importing it, your question is on the rest part of the. Can you repeat the rest part of the question?
Sure, sir. So how do you see the consumption pattern changing in 2024?
So in 2024, we expect it to further increase. See, as I said, steel production is increasing. We are anticipating around 30-40 million tons more addition on steel production compared to the previous year in the coming years. Government is looking for more and more of stainless steel production. Like if you remember in the last budget, government announced that we are looking for defense sector and the trains should be all of stainless steel compartments. It should not be of the MS steel or any other steel. So when we talk about more quality, high quality steel, definitely molybdenum consumption would increase. That plays a major role into it. So 2024, keeping the prices apart and the fluctuations apart, consumption and demand is definitely going to increase every year. It's not about last year or this year or next year. If you compare the data, you must have seen that every year on year, we see a rise in consumption of molybdenum by 5 to 7%, up to 8% on year growth basis. So 2024 is definitely good. It's not looking bad. Uh, Ups and downs in the demand may come and go, but then overall situations of moly market is very good.
Okay. So my next question is for Parvesh sir. Sir, can you provide insights into the factors driving the demand for ferromoly in different industries? I mean, which all sectors for ferromoly are experiencing notable growth?
As we discussed till now, that stainless steel industry is one segment which we foresee that it will see a notable growth in demand. Auto sector, it may not see, because part of the having the electric vehicle foreseen in future, so which will be replacing the conventional mechanical drive vehicle. So that sector may see some headwinds from ferromoly production perspective, ferromoly demand perspective. Defense is another segment wherein we see that, and of course, duly supported by government policy. And molybdenum is a strategic element for India. So, so we see that, and India is strengthening on its defense part more and more in coming days. So we see that. So that's one segment which we see that that will provide the boost to the domestic molybdenum industry per se. Udin, you would like to add anything to that?
Uh, More or less, I agree with Pravesh ji. Adding to this, I was reading a recent article. Molybdenum has been termed as a critical item, which means that now into defense sector as well, components of noble alloys will components of arms and ammunitions would require such noble alloys usage as a part of their manufacturing, and that is why it is termed as a critical element. Because as we all know, the properties of moly is to provide hardness and strength and corrosion free to steel, which is a very important part. uh, we are also moving towards sustainability steel. So thus the other factors which would there will be a notable demand increase. Also, the application of moly is not just related, or it's not stuck to just steel industry. The application of moly is also like moly oxide is also used in the chemical, pigments, oil and natural gas. So if we see, I was reading a data wherein since last 2 years, moly oxide increased by the chemical plants has been substantially increased by around 15%. So there are many companies coming up in India who are producing now uh, chemical grade of molybdenum from moly oxide and supplying it to these chemical companies and the pigment companies. So these are the different application other than the steel industry. Of course, 90% of this application in India for ferromolybdenum is into steel, but even other sectors, like I mentioned, is also gaining its volume and in terms of demand and in terms of production. So we do see a notable increase in the production, and trend shifts, of course, largely will remain the steel industry, but then these are the another industry applications which are into use now.
Right. With this, we move on to the next segment on ferromoly imports. Earlier during the discussion, Udyan sir mentioned that roughly 600, 700 tons per month of moly oxide imports are being seen, and 300, 350 tons of ferromoly. So I would like to know from Mr. Garg that what do you see the numbers going by in the coming year, and what are the factors do you feel that would be impacting the imports? Of course, one was mentioned by Udyan sir regarding the duty structure, which is a safeguard for the Indian players. Anything else that you would like to add?
I think there are see the molybdenum demand to me is being catered through three different routes. One is of course the ferromoly direct import, etc. Second is this steel scrap. Steel scrap is one of the major source of molybdenum supply, molybdenum source to the stainless steel industry. And what we see is that we also see a positive development in that. From our perspective, is that the stainless steel scrap of quality which contains molybdenum, that is becoming scarce and scarce. So people are shifting more from scrap-based production to the charging-based structure, wherein they are to add ferromolybdenum or calcium moly or any other form of molybdenum which they can get, and they can source that. So that's a positive sign for it. Second part is that the use of spent catalysts, etc. The petrochemical industry generates a lot of spent catalysts. So and of course it's a hazardous waste. But there are some converters in India, some authorized processors in India. They are converting that and they are catering to that steel industry. So demand is growing. Demand will grow in India, and so and this will be more broadly will be catered through this calcium moly, ferromoly route, and partly supplemented by the spent catalyst route. So that's how we see the demand and supply part of it.
I would like to add into it with your permission.
Yeah, please.
Basically, with the removal of duty from ferromoly, of course, the domestic demand and the domestic production is going to increase. But then we are also looking we are trying hard to on the removal of duty on moly oxide. If that happens soon, India, as on today, is a net importer of moly oxide. India does not export ferromolybdenum because we do not have a level playing field. So if that happens, the duties are removed. India can also be competitive in export like other countries like Korea or China or anybody else, because they do not have that duty structure of on custom duty on the raw material moly oxides. So even that would drive the demand or the imports of moly oxide into India, making it more competitive, and that is a revenue generation for the government as well, because you bring in the forex reserves for the India. So the capacity is not an issue. Demand is not an issue. We look for a better demand and consumption in India as well as I think, Praveshji, we can think of going into export market as well once the duties on the raw materials is also removed soon.
Certainly. I think that will not be required. The Indian demand will be so much that
Right. True.
Sir, my next question is for both of you, how have geopolitical factors impacted the import dynamics of ferro moly in the Indian market?
I don't think so. Geopolitical factors play a major role or any role in import dynamics of ferromolybdenum in the Indian market. Only difference what we can find at times is any shipment issues or vessel issues may result in delay arrivals of the material, which may contribute a very small percentage of shortage into the market for a very minimal period. But other than that, any geopolitical factors does not play a major role because, see, understand, like we take current examples of the geopolitical tensions between Israel or the Russian and the Ukraine war. All these factors have not impacted the moly industry at all. There are many other origins across the world where availability of moly oxide and ferromolybdenum is there. So it really doesn't disturb the Indian sentiment or in the Indian demand. Also, in comparison to the world's demand of molybdenum and production, India is very small at the moment. We do not even have uh, not even 1% of the contribution of molybdenum production or consumption compared to the world's demand. So that really is insignificant how the geopolitical factors would impact molybdenum import or in the Indian market. I don't think so that is any much of a concern for the domestic players.
Yeah, except that geopolitical factors, for example, in Peru, for last year, they impacted the kind of production level or the supply side of it from that country, and which created a fears in the worldwide, and that also resulted into the the price spike for some time. So other than that, geopolitical factors does not have much impact on Indian imports per se. Whatever geopolitical factors are there, be it in Chile or Peru or elsewhere, they have a global
Yeah,
impact, and
exactly.
so no, not specific to India per se.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we move to the last segment of the panel discussion, which is on the outlook of the prices for the next quarter. So my first question is to Udayan sir, like what are the factors you feel help contribute in the fluctuations of Indian ferromolybdenum prices? Do you see futures or any other factor that has been impacting the domestic prices in India?
There are, of course, several factors which play the fluctuation part into the Indian market for the ferromoly prices. See, one of the major factor was we are again discussing the same. I've been telling the same that the duty factor, which has now been removed. So one of the major concern to the Indian market or the Indian ferromolybdenum industry is now at, at ease. Other than that, fluctuations in the raw material for the value addition part, like aluminum, ferrosilicon, which are one of the major raw material for producing ferromolybdenum, unless we see a major spike into those prices, any shortage or any huge demand on ferrosilicon or aluminum side across the globe or in India, the prices of molybdenum value addition remains more or less stable between 8 to 10%. Other than this, of course, the global demand, if there is any shortage, any mines having any issue across the world, whether in Chile or China, any shipment issues, vessel issues, all these are the driving factors which creates a bit more of the fluctuations in the ferromoly prices. Uh, See, nowadays, fundamental things have faded. In India, the dynamics as on today, the prices are so volatile. Sentiments play a major role. Something happens elsewhere in some part of the world, it is directly related or correlated with the molybdenum or any other uh, alloys or ferroalloys. But then that is very short-lived. That sentiments are not that of a major concern. Then with respect to demand of course is a major concern. If demand is there, irrespective there is good production, bad production, the prices are going to remain stable. But we see a continuous fluctuation every day nowadays in moly by 10, 20, 30 cents, even 50 cents in a day. So that creates a tension and a panic between the producers and the suppliers that probably it may fall, it may go up. So we have seen a shift like overnight, we see a $1 fall and a $1 up. So that creates confusion and a panic selling into the market. These are the factors which mainly contribute to the price fluctuations. Uh, nothing else comes up to my mind what factors could contribute more to the fluctuations. Many a times it happens, there is a season, say the first quarter of every calendar year, we see there is too much of imports of moly scrap into India. So, of course, that's a cheaper source of raw material, wherein they can get around 1.5, 2% of moly content into it. So they prefer using that instead of the virgin route or the original route of ferromolybdenum production. So that is mainly the couple of months of the beginning of the calendar year. Also during the third quarter of the year, like September, October, uh, that's also been a soft time wherein, monsoons come into picture, the more applications into other sectors are at ease, the demand is a bit poor. That times we see more of a fluctuation in terms of prices, but otherwise it's not a seasonal product, which will impact on month basis. And the fluctuations in the global industry is going to directly affect the prices or the mainly the prices in the domestic market, because it is completely linked with the Platts or the metal bulletin index. There's nothing else which can drive the prices on the fluctuation.
Right. Mr. Garg, anything that you want to add up?
No, that's okay.
Okay, so my next question is to Mr. Garg. Yeah, can you compare and analyze the price trends of domestically produced ferromoly versus imported varieties? I mean, is there any disparity in prices because a good quantity is being imported in India? So, could you please share
So,
with?
first of all, like in molybdenum, there are no varieties per se. For example, like ferromolybdenum is typically at 60% molybdenum because of metallurgical reasons, I would consider. So that's one part, that there's no variety per se. Second part is that there's no price difference also in terms of, if you look at the commodity price at benchmark prices, and the conversion cost is or the value addition is hardly anything in this. So Indian ferromoly producers are at par with any global producers across the world. The only difference that brings in the difference in the cost structure is the duty structure. As we discussed earlier, why the imports were happening more, because certain countries were enjoying the benefit of the zero duty. Whereas if you look at Indian domestic producers, we are importing molybdenum oxide from any country at 2.5% duty, for example. Or if we are importing it at reduced duty, then the suppliers also taking a premium on that, in a way nullifying that duty benefit that Indian government has provided to its producers. So that was bringing in, or that is bringing in one major disadvantage to the domestic ferro moly producers as compared to elsewhere in the world. So as Udyan was saying earlier, that if that disadvantage is taken away by Government of India, as it has been supportive in case of safeguard duty, probably will be also ready to export our goods. So in terms of quality, in terms of the variety, in terms of any other parameter, our goods are as good as comparable to anybody, the producers across the world. The only disadvantage is the price because of the duty structure. And secondly, because this molybdenum is imported into India, we don't have any domestic reserve of molybdenum. Second is a freight cost, etc. That inward freight, outward freight, etc., etc. So that adds to the disadvantage. Otherwise, there's no disadvantage per se.
So, then, sir, would you like to add your feedback on it?
He rightly said there are no imported varieties. Of course, in every commodity, there is something called off grade and standard. Like nowadays, high copper material is being considered considering the price advantage which people can get. But then in the process of aluminite thermate process, there is no process to reduce copper in that process. Whatever comes with the oxide is being passed on to the ferromolybdenum, which certainly not all stainless steel plants or steel plants would accept high copper material. So that becomes difficult, which could have been the advantage. But then, other than that, he has already explained Indian quality, Indian price is as good as any other imported ferromolybdenum coming to India or being traded anywhere in the world. Only the duty factor is something which keeps us behind being competitive. Nothing else.
Sir, actually, Ferromoly 65% grade is also being produced in other countries. So, is there any plan to produce 65 grade in India? Because what I get to know, 65% grade is generally not being produced in India. So, what would be
No,
like?
that's not correct actually. 65% grade is also produced in India. So it all depends who wants what. In
Okay.
fact, we produce 70% as well. We sell 70% grade material to many welding electrode companies and who are mainly concentrated into specialized steel, special steel. They need high grade of moly content. So we do produce that. It's just the need of the industry is the base 60%, and that is why 60% is produced. See, it is not a rocket science. There is no X factor involved in producing 65%. Moly oxide doesn't come of 65%. It ranges between 58 to 63%. With that, anybody can produce 58, 60, 65, or even 70%. So it's all depends on the recipe, on the process, what the production has to take to convert the muddy oxide, reduce the oxide into metal form, whether it is 65 or it is 60. Like Europeans want 65% moly content. US wants 60% moly content. Asia wants 60% moly content. Likewise, India also requires 60% moly. That's the base being created. Rest, the pricing and all the other factors remain same. The material, as I initially mentioned, the value of moly is on its percent basis. Even 1% is a big impact on its value. So it's basically on the pro rata basis. Whatever would be the price of 60% would be directly correlated as a pro rata for the price of 65 or 70. That's the only thing. Otherwise, 65 is no rocket science to produce by any moly manufacturer.
Okay, thank you for clearing my doubt. And one more question I would like to ask, like how do market participants manage and navigate price volatility in the ferro moly sector?
I would like Mr. Parvesh ji to first answer this, and I'll contribute on that.
No, no, again, there's no rocket science to it. Just keep your eyes and ears open. That's the only way to navigate the volatility. And so you reduce the impact of that volatility. You cannot nullify it. I don't think that. So we saw that burnt in February, March this year, February to April. We saw that impact. Maybe everybody was impacted, to my understanding, maybe to a different degree. But volatility is part of this game or part of this commodity. This is a small commodity globally. If you see, hardly 3 lakh ton of volumes as compared to aluminium, copper, which are millions and millions of tonnage of this thing. So volatility, any small supply side of news will no, or any small demand side of news would take the prices to either direction. So volatility is part of this commodity. So only thing is how much vigilant you are, or to what extent you can understand the price trends, etc. That's all. Udyan, anything?
Managing volatility is, I think 60% is in your hand. And rest 40% you have to leave it on the market fluctuation because it's not a single country produced commodity, its price is being derived worldwide, wherein you do not have the control on the worldwide demand and supply, where the major fluctuations take place over the period. But of course, you need to be into this market in and out throughout the day, talk to lot many people overseas, say China, Europe, Asia, wherever possible, wherever you can develop your sources to understand the market price. You see, also understand we have a disadvantage being in India due to the time zone of Europe and America. Now the market opens there right in the morning, where we are already in the afternoon. People having a good connection, good source, good relation there can get a price accept accessibility and the update on the markets a bit faster than us. So it all depends how good your network is, how faster you can react. See, any commodity, there are 20 days fluctuation of moly prices in a month. All the days in a week, 5 days a week, it fluctuates. This material is produced in a lot of 10 oblique 20 metric tons, largely into 20 metric tons lot. Any company producing 100 metric tons of ferromolybdenum, maybe he would be having couple of containers on formula pricing to, not being very speculative on the market. He needs to be secure, and rest of the 40-50% he must be procuring on the spot market. How many days price accessibility or price averaging or leveraging advantage does a manufacturer have? 2, 3, 4 days. The more the production capacity of any company would have a better leverage and an averaging possibility to leverage out its risk, mitigate its risk, reduce the speculation. But then at the same time, you can never buy at bottom and sell on top. That's not possible. Nobody has that crystal ball to decide whether today what I'm buying is the cheapest and tomorrow what I'll be selling would be at the top. So definitely any manufacturers, 10-15% of the quantity is such where they take the hit of selling at a loss or selling at the bottom and buying at a top, or vice versa. So the only brahmastra, or uh, the biggest arrow which you can use to mitigate or navigate the prices is keep your eyes and ears open, be into the market, get into the depth, get in more and more touch of people, traders, suppliers, manufacturers. That's the only way you can mitigate your volatility, or avoid speculation or gambling on, because this product is called a gambling. It's a product. Such products like nickel, molybdenum, copper, cobalt, all these products have a daily price change. That's the only way. And now, because the prices are so high, it also becomes difficult for anybody to, keep on averaging every alternate day or every week for buying another container. The prices are huge. Finances should also support, because this industry, you need more of the working capital than compared to the capital investment. And that is where we Indians get a bit on the back foot, wherein such high capital, such high working capital expenditure and investment could turn it either side. You may be a Raja one day and you may be a Rank another day. So all those things all depends on the companies, individuals, risk ability, risk appetite, and that's how you have to mitigate your and navigate the prices of molybdenum.
Well, thank you so much for those in-depth discussions. Just to sum up with the key takeaways that we could understand from this panel discussion, that we expect with the duty being, the South Korea thing that has happened by the government. So we expect the ferromoly imports to fall, and that will definitely support the Indian domestic industry and lift the production volumes. Demand, definitely, we heard from the panelists that demand seems to be robust in the next year as well. And stainless steel policy is something that they both of them are looking out for, and that is likely to keep the demand for ferromoly supported next year as well. On the technology front, they say that probably things may not change so much, and in the next 5 years, the technological things will remain largely the same on the production process front. Rest, of course, the demand is expected to increase by about 7 to 8% on YOY basis. And yeah, they are seeking removal of the import duty on the moly oxide, which will again provide some level playing field. So really, well, it's time to wrap up the session, but honestly, I enjoyed the discussion, and we really thank our esteemed panelists for the detailed and in-depth discussions that we had today. Well, we have another Engage 5.0 session coming up today at 3:30 in the afternoon, which is on the topic Karnataka iron ore industry facing the changing metrics. Thank you to the panelists once again. Thanks, Anvita, for co-hosting this webinar with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And a
Thank
big
you. Thank you so much.
thank you to the esteemed viewers. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.